Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with some information about Total War Warhammer 2. First off, a massive thanks to Creative Assembly, who were kind enough to invite me to Santa Monica, where I and a few others got an early peek of the campaign map, a chance to play the Kroq Gar quest battle that was teased in the in-engine trailer, and a chance to chat with some of the devs. I'll be able to show you all the footage I captured from the quest battle in about 2 weeks, so make sure you tune in for that. But this video has me, joined by the voices of
Andy Hall. I'm the lead writer on Total War Warhammer 2.
My name is Sam Millen. I'm the lead development manager on Warhammer 2.
And it's more about the new mechanics, the new factions, and Skaven denial.
What's a Doom Man?
Never heard of it.
I'm just putting words together.
Doom Man Wheel.
Doom and Wheel, it sounds cool. I feel like it
Sounds like a cool thing.
Yeah, make that.
Some of the information I present here is also from an interview that Oakley, Indie Pride, and Pixelated Apollo did with the developers at this same event. If you don't already follow those guys, make sure you check them out. I'll have links to their channels in the pinned comments below. Right off the bat, I can confirm that we're officially getting free-for-all battles once again. Interestingly, they won't be determined by last man standing rules, but instead will be based on damage dealt. Naturally, killing a skink and killing a carnosaur are very different, though some dwarfs might say it still only counts as one. This, coupled with the fact that free-for-all maps are going to be smaller, means they will be extremely intense and cutthroat in nature. Corner camping won't be an option, and since winner is calculated by damage dealt, avoiding engagement until the last act won't necessarily net you the win. While I was hoping we'd also get free-for-all battles on the campaign map, given the centralized objectives of the races, this won't be the case. But who knows, maybe next time.
We're kind of seeing free-for-all as a sort of a step in to sort of see how the community responds to that, and seeing where that thirst for multiplayer lies. It's something that we want to do more with. At the moment, we know that our player base is majoritively single-player focused, so we want to feed to that, and there's so much we can do in single-player that we want to keep doing that. We want to do the multiplayer stuff as well, so we're kind of doing a first step in, see how people respond, and then as it's a trilogy, we've totally got that ability to expand over time and put new stuff in, and it means that if multiplayer becomes a bigger thing in, say, Warhammer 3, for instance, then that doesn't apply just to Warhammer 3, it affects Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 1. So it means even if it comes later, it still retroactively applies. So it's something we're looking at.
I think the theory is you want kind of that fan base to grow organically rather than trying to force it. So it never quite works if you kind of force that.
Yeah.
I mean, also, as well as free-for-all, we've obviously got co-op campaign, it's kind of a new thing, and as well as head-to-head stuff, so you can share your ritual currency. Which is a big part of the Vortex Campaign and stuff like that.
So we're getting the co-op campaigns and head-to-head campaigns, and with co-op campaigns, players need to be in the same race, while head-to-head, players can play as any race, of course. The campaign, as we know by now, focuses on the Vortex as a core storyline, but it's still a sandbox, so the storyline can be ignored if you wish, evidently. If you do decide to stick with the Vortex objectives, you'll still see plenty of variety in gameplay. In order to earn the required ritual currency to cast the rituals needed, you can opt to go through a variety of approaches, from taking territory to specific building chains to various missions handed out to you. There are multiple ways of going about it, like I said. We're also going to get an endgame experience that is something new that the developers wanted to try out, but naturally they're keeping it under wraps. Each race also has their own narrative going on as the campaign proceeds, so they won't all feel similar even though they're dealing with similar objectives. We were also told that we'd be seeing movies as we proceed through the campaign, so it looks like we're going quite heavily story-driven. I'd love to see some of those assassination videos come back from Shogun era as well, but I think they were talking more specifically about story-driven videos. I can also confirm that if you've got Total War Warhammer 2, you will be able to choose factions from either game if you're playing multiplayer, including against somebody who only has the first game, though they'll be restricted in their faction choices. As far as I understand, that's how multiplayer is going to work between the two games. As a result of this, and the fact that these old races will make an appearance on the campaign map, we can expect old factions to get tweaks for the purpose of balancing as time goes on. One such example, beyond stats, is that dragons in the new game will have breath abilities, for example breathing fire, and so dragons in the previous game will also have these abilities added. It's great to hear that these two games, and ultimately 3, seem to be moving forward as a unit. With that said, we're also going to be seeing some of the old factions on the new campaign map.
This is, one of the benefits of doing the trilogy this way is that when we're doing Warhammer 2, we've got all of that Warhammer 1 content made, and it just, it doesn't make sense to not put it into Warhammer 2, right? And have those as factions you can fight against, because more variety is better as far as we're concerned.
You know, this is still a standalone game as well. It's a standalone product. So even if you don't own Warhammer 1 and you play Warhammer 2, you're still going to fight these races that we developed in Warhammer 1. Yeah, I mean, one of the fun things about Lustra in the New World, it isn't just literally, Lustra isn't just 100% Lizardmen. You've got Skeggy there, you've got Dark Elf Raiders, the Vampire Coast, Astelian Conquistadors. So there's plenty of kind of stuff that we can interact with. We've got Bretonian colonies in the Southlands.
Yeah.
So if there's something's been mentioned somewhere in the 30 years of Warhammer IP,
we'll tap into it, yeah.
Simply put, if the assets exist, why not bring them into the new game? It will be interesting to see if that approach is taken retroactively as well, where factions from the new game will make an appearance in the previous one. After all, the dwarves did get rat poison, the location of Skaven Blight is on the map, and we've seen events that hint at Skaven in the old world. For the record, there's still no confirmation that Skaven are the fourth faction. I'm just making things up on that front. As a part of this development resourcefulness, we're also going to see rogue armies on the campaign map. These guys are going to be randomly generated armies on the map, starting off as small, non-threatening horde armies, but slowly growing to a size that might cause serious concern.
If you let them grow and become a problem, then they're going to come your way, they're going to try and do some damage to you, maybe they'll go and settle in the ruins over there and really put a thorn in your side. So, yeah, they're kind of like a problem you need to be aware of and deal with, and maybe you just scout out, make sure you got sight of your territory.
On the campaign map, we caught a brief glimpse of one such rogue army led by a tree man. The most interesting part of these rogue armies is probably their composition.
The thing that we can do that's really interesting with these guys is that we can make them multi-race. So, for example, we have a Goblin Beastmaster army that has squigs and stegodons mixed in together, and it's all about feral beasts. So it means that we can have some really interesting thematic gameplays, and that's, you know, a cool kind of lore-wise armies to play against. But it's also just different gameplay, right? You're no longer playing against just a standard melee infantry archers. It
throws a complete spanner in the works as well. You know, maybe you can say that playing like orcs in the early campaign, you fight orcs an awful lot. So here we go, you may fight lizardmen a lot, but oh, here comes a goblin beastman army, just to kind of change it up around about turn 30 or something.
So these rogue armies will add a great deal of unpredictability to the game, where you can't just use pre-composed armies against every single rogue army.
It's another element of tension. You're in the Vortex Campaign, and I don't know, another race has cast their third ritual and you're still on ritual 2, and it's like you want to get to ritual 3, but you've now got to deal with this rogue faction in the middle. So there's more challenge there as well, isn't it? So making sure your campaign isn't just on rails.
The campaign map itself was beautiful. As before, each faction seems to have its own influence on the map's aesthetic, and we got to see both high elf starting positions. They are extremely far apart. Teclis starts on the Turtle Isles, nowhere near Ulthuan. As we flew across the expanse, we caught a glimpse of the Vampire Coast and also ruins dotted across the lands. These ruins can be looted by any faction to either earn a randomly selected item from, I quote,
a stupid amount at this point,
or potentially fall into some disastrous situations that can stagnate your progress. So this acts as yet another thing to do on the campaign map. I expect I'll be spending a lot more time chasing objectives and ruins in this game between battles, which should allow for a great change in pacing where we're not just jumping from one battle to another when we grow to a massive, indestructible size. There are also going to be encounters at sea to make sure that the large expanses of water don't get boring in any way. We're also going to see maelstroms, storms that move between turns, reefs, etc. that will make the waters hard to traverse, and we're going to see, I quote, a certain race that's really good at sea that they can't say anything about right now. So encounters at sea are going to be similar to ruins with a risk and reward system, and encounters at sea, ruins, and rogue armies will all make an appearance in the old world if you have both games. Since we're talking about the campaign map, let's quickly talk about influence, astromancy stats, sacred spawning, Lileath's blessing, and the Geomantic Web. We've seen some great faction-specific tools in the previous game, and that's continuing here. Influence is a tool that belongs to the High Elves to reflect their more nefarious side. These guys are haughty, indignant, and political scoundrels, and influence is a type of currency you can use for diplomatic ends. Try to get allies to hate each other, for example, and a variety of other political intrigue-type scenarios.
You can imagine these high elf spies kind of whispering in the ears of the advisors, oh, he said this about you, and stuff like that. Which is very high elfing, because they're not just the good guys, they're political animals.
Then we've got astromancy stats exclusive to the Lizardmen.
astromancy stance, new stance for the Lizardmen. Increases your line of sight by 50%, so you sit in the stance, and the next turn you can see much further. Really great for sort of just that kind of Lizardman gameplay of sort of owning the jungle and looking around and seeing what's going on. I think it also gives them vanguard deployment and a higher ambush.
Sacred Spawning refers to specific Lizardman side missions that unlock blessed unit variants on completion for recruitment. These guys are all stronger than their standard variants, and I was unable to clarify whether that strength was statistic-based or if it included unit abilities. Lileath's Blessing was briefly mentioned as I was curious about how some mechanics transition into the game. This specific one has been converted into a campaign map stance, as opposed to something on the battlefield. It gives increased experience and winds of magic to the mages in your army to reflect the tabletop effect that made it easier to cast high magic spells. When it comes to the Geomantic Web,
there is a series of Geomantic Web power lines throughout the map that tie certain settlements together, and by owning those settlements and building up a certain building chain, you grow the power of those settlements, and that then in turn powers the link between them. And based upon what the power of that link is, you can cast higher level commandments in those settlements. So it's all about working out which settlements you need to capture to be able to strengthen the power between them, and then using that to your advantage to have more powerful commandments that can do various things, low corruption, increase growth, various things like that. So if you go for the right places and build the right things, or maybe you look over there and that guy who's currently your ally, he's got a settlement that you want, and he's actually built up that chain, and you guys, if you go and take that, that's going to strengthen you a lot. So yeah, there's lots of gameplay and working out where to go.
So that sounds pretty crucial to the campaign in ensuring progression for your faction, and yet another secondary objective to keep in mind on the campaign map that will make the long haul easier.
I think the key to the mechanic is it's always the lowest level of your cities, of the lowest city. Right. So that encourages you to make sure you keep building your cities up. Right. So even if you've got like level 4, 5 and 6, if you've got a level 2 city, that's your commandments.
Apparently, as a result of this, we're also getting a new type of campaign map overview. We can zoom out further than we've been able to before, and rather than just get a parchment map, we get an overview of this Geomantic Web.
Something you need to see in practice.
And that's how we're seeing geomancy in game 2. Pretty crucial to the game without literally and metaphorically breaking the world upon which it's built. I took a poke and asked if they could go into details about the Dark Elf specific mechanics.
Not just yet. No.
They've got one. Oh, have they got one?
They've got several.
I'll take a look at what they might potentially bring to the map, but if you have any thoughts of your own, let me know in the comments below. Further on, asking about mechanics such as corruption that cause attrition or can be fought or built up using characters and structures.
So chaos and vampiric corruption remain the same and can affect the entirety of the New World.
Something we can't.
Yeah, there's something else we can't say right now.
We can't say.
But yeah, the entirety of the New World can be corrupted in the same way as the Old World.
So we're getting something new alongside it all. My guess is we're going to see plague rats scurrying around the campaign map, spreading disease and quickly thinning out cities and armies while factions fight to hold it at bay. But that's just speculation. While the siege battles are staying the same as Warhammer 1, we're getting the addition of Fortress Gate battles. These are supposed to be extremely difficult siege battles where you can't bring in any siege equipment. Fortress Gates are settlements on the campaign map, and they control passage in and out of Ulthuan, so they will provide an extremely important strategic benefit. Spell selection and mechanics will make the extremely powerful casters in this game stand out from previous casters. Teclis will have something reminiscent of his ability to pick and choose spells from the various lores. Skill trees will also allow these powerful casters to stand out from casters from less magically inclined races. We're also going to have unit scale and magic balanced now, so that will certainly make a big difference in how powerful these casters feel. Rites are another addition to the campaign map. They're minor rituals that can be performed by spending currency. Each faction can use these rites differently to activate various effects. As examples, there are battlefield abilities. The Lizardmen can use rites to awaken Slann and bring them into the recruitment pool, or to spawn a feral beast army to provide assistance. We're also seeing some variety brought into Lords, where we're seeing tiers when it comes to quality. For example, High Elves are only able to recruit low-tier Lords until they have pulled together enough influence to recruit some of the more powerful ones. Meanwhile, the Slann, as mentioned earlier, need to be awoken to be pulled into the recruitment pool. This doesn't apply to named characters, but rather it's for generic Lords instead. We're seeing plenty of new battlefield mechanics as well. the Lizardmen roster reveal has already showed us the addition of Rage and Rampage. Rage comes in at 2 different tiers based on the unit from what I saw, and in many ways this harkens back to the elephants of previous games. If the unit has taken enough damage to health or leadership, it will start rampaging. You'll lose control of it, and it will chase after the nearest enemy unit. Naturally, some units like the Temple Guard...
They're really interesting that they, being Saurus, they can rampage, but because they're so high leadership, so well controlled, it's actually really tough to get them to rampage, but at that, it's almost kind of like a berserker thing at the end, with a rampage right at the end, and really just keep going. Yeah, they're awesome.
Any of the larger beasts that are manned by skinks are immune to this sort of behavior. Having played the Kroq Gar quest battle, something I'll be showing you plenty of in about 2 weeks, I can tell you that Rage and Rampage are fun mechanics. It's the type of thing I wish the Greenskins had to show their thirst for WoW. Using Cold-Blooded to heal units to prevent Rampage was important, but had to be done carefully as it reduced melee defense while regenerating health. There were a few times when losing control of my units threw my battle plan out the window, but that just added to the thrill of playing as Lizardmen, trying to keep my feral beasts in check. We also got to see a battlefield ability that is tied to the army rather than the lord, which is an interesting new addition. The ability that we saw allowed our Lizardmen army to summon a unit of cold ones to the battlefield. The ability had a cooldown timer, so it couldn't be spammed, of course, and it had a limit to how many times it could be cast as well. This new mechanic is going to be an interesting addition to the battlefield, and we were told that these army abilities are actually earned on the campaign map. I'm curious to see exactly how we earn them, and what variety this new mechanic holds. We were told of a High Elf rite that we can perform to have access to an army ability called Vol's Hammer that literally brings a hammer down in a siege battle to take out a wall segment. There's another that lets you spawn an eagle into a siege defense battle as long as the settlement has a specific building. The High Elves all had martial prowess for their units, which gave them stat boosts and ensured that they could hold the line for longer. We saw High Elf Spearmen, Anti-Large Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers, and High Elf Archers with a range of 170. While stats are likely to change, the developers did mention that High Elves are supposed to be the highest range archers in the game. We also saw Anti-Infantry Silver Helm Knights, Sword Masters, a Dragon, 2 Mages on Chariots, one with the lore of High Magic and the other with the lore of Light. This is all from memory. I'll be clarifying this and getting into more detail again when I'm actually showcasing the video in about 2 weeks. We also saw from the Lizardmen, of course, Kroq Gar on Grimlock, Anti-Large Cold One Cavalry, Feral Stegodons and Feral Bastillodons, alongside Bastillodons with solar engines atop them. The Ark of Sotek is coming as well, but they're still nailing down the Jungle Swarm mechanics before unleashing it upon us. We also got to see Skinks with poisonous blowpipes and Pterodon Riders with Fire Leech bolas and the ability to drop rocks like gyrocopters drop bombs. There's more we saw here and there, and as I said before, you can expect me to go into a lot more detail, with visuals of course, when I can in about 2 weeks. I do want to say though, seeing the High Elf Dragon and Kroq Gar on Grimlock go toe-to-toe was awesome, as there are some very epic synchronized animations. Beyond things we've seen on tabletop, the Total War Warhammer team basically have relatively free reign within reason to flesh out things that have been mentioned in the many years of Warhammer fantasy history, and some things that have never been mentioned at all. Consider the Revivification Crystal. We saw what happened to Bretonnia, and I asked if we can expect to see entire armies or factions that were merely mentioned in the book somewhere. The response?
Yes. That's all we can say at the moment.
Fair enough.
We're on that.
That laugh at the end is very telling. I can't wait to see what they've got in store. When talking about the plan for DLC, sounds like the plan is to keep things similar to the last go-around. Some free content, some paid content, of course, and even more depth to the lore added wherever possible. This is obviously good news. The old model was great in its quantity and quality in my opinion, and I enjoyed how the world fleshed out over time, giving us more to play with. On asking if the DLC factions, if there are any to come, would share the same Vortex-based objectives, the developers mentioned that that's something they're not entirely ready to talk about, and something they haven't made final decisions on yet.
That'll come in time.
And that's it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for joining me for this conversation about Total War Warhammer 2. It sounds extremely exciting. What we got to see was amazing. Once again, a massive thank you to Creative Assembly for bringing me down to Santa Monica to give this all a look, a try, and for the conversations I got to have with the developers. Remember, I'll be able to showcase the quest battle between Kroq Gar's Lizardmen and the High Elves in about 2 weeks, so make sure you tune in for that. As always, guys, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content as I continue to cover previous games and push forward with the new ones. Lots of cool reveals coming soon, I'm sure, and I'll do my best to cover it all so we know exactly what to expect. After all, knowing is half the battle, and that's what being a great general is about.